straightforward actually for us to share. So today's session is about, we call it Pinocchio because it is a nice personification of a topic that we're going to talk about. And the main part of it is going to be about those strings. So, in which ways and to which level we have the free will to act, and what is really free will, and from what point we believe that is our free will, but somebody has planted a string long ago when we didn't know any better, and that string still raises our hands, our head, and move us in certain directions while thinking that we are doing things by our own free will. So we will dive into that. We will understand which level of strings exist so that we can kind of raise our consciousness around them. And we will talk about some ways to liberate ourselves from that predicament. Mm-hmm. We will also discuss...
The good news, we have something very efficient that works.
Oh, for sure. We wouldn't share it if we haven't already tested it out and saw that we can actually detach ourselves from them once that we know that they are attached. So, and yet another question is whether we are born into this life strings free or we are already born with strings. So that's going to be also an interesting one to look at. So to begin with, like always, we would like to ask you guys, what is your experience with some strings that you have yourself?
Strings
for example.
And what we call also chords, the ones that are between people or between things and you.
Yeah. We can define those strings as, like compulsions that are making us do things out of what we know better we should. And that goes between behaviors and between people. So we turn it to you guys and we want to know maybe your favorite string, or if you feel like you don't have any more strings attached, to also share a little bit about that.
How come?
How well, you can tell that you have removed them all. That's also possible. We have people who are having no strings attached. So how about you guys? Who would like to tell us about your favorite strings, maybe attached to your right hand, left hand, or something? Yes, Lisa.
Lisa and then Hannah.
Uh-huh.
I'd say that my of the many strings that I'm attached to, I'd like to say probably I'm very attached to my self-righteous indignation.
We know that one well, Lisa.
I love it. It feels so good, doesn't it? Cool. Thank you for... it's so heartwarming, when we are just kind of sharing things as they are and joking about it. But yeah, we know. It's really, really cool. Thank you.
There's Hannah.
Hannah.
Yeah, today it seemed like I had some strings attached. I ran into like a big vase. I mean, that's here always on my veranda, and I really bruised my thigh so badly. And it seemed like, I don't know, like I was walking and suddenly crashed against it. Like it was as if I would not have done it. So that was really, really interesting to see that it's coming up today on the tea topic. And I guess we've done so much work that I feel very free, like shape-shifting in terms of character and what I do. There's just one string that I clearly see, which is like a situation in my life that is not in my power to change. And that is still like attached to my dad's inheritance and his wife, and kind of that we can't get rid of her until this process is resolved, which is not in our hands to decide the speed of that. So I would say that's always a good thing to see when there's situations that we can't resolve in our lives, like a marriage or children or something like that. Then of course there must be some strong strings.
Thank you, Hannah. it's actually visually interesting to uh, reflect on that sharing, that those people are almost like dangling at the end of this big string, which is something that has to do with money and security. So, like whoever, whenever there is like a death or divorce or some sort of family change in ownership, that dangling parts on the strings of fear of money are starting to play their theater. So it's really, really interesting to kind of see how we are connected through people with whom we might not be directly connected, but through another string. Very, very beautifully example. Thank you, Anna. And I'm sure it's a beautiful example. I'm sure it's not easy to go through it, but yeah, thanks for sharing it anyway. Yes, how about some of you other beautiful people out there? What are your favorite strings, Girgana?
Hey guys, my favorite string, if I could call it that, is with my mother. I mean, not surprising because I guess we all have strings with our parents. But for me, I realized recently, after a long process, that the strings or like her influence over me has been so strong and so unconscious that it took me over 40 years to realize. And when I actually finally realized it, um, it was literally like I woke up in a brand new world. Um, Exciting, but also really scary because I had no idea who I am, what am I here to do, and how do I go about it. But interesting question where you said what has helped you at least see the strings. I think it was just coming close to my mother because I think unconsciously, ever since I was very young, I've been running away, trying to establish myself, trying to be who I am, but I was carrying an aspect of her within. And that aspect really made me unconsciously live life the way she would have liked me to live it, or make choices that she would have made. And yeah, it took me a while to go back and really slow down, get back close to her, examine how she lives life, how she treats me, how she treats the world, to understand that I have been doing exactly that without knowing. And um, and it was awareness. It was me tracking back through life to see, okay, so that's why I chose a profession that is so against my heart, and it took me 10 years of my life to study and work away at it, and with blood, sweat, and tears, try to establish myself. And it never worked, and it just drained the hell out of me. And it took me just to see how she lives life in that way and see why I made that choice. For example, that's just one amongst many. But seeing how she treats life, how she treats people, how she treats herself and me over the last few years, finally it kind of dawned on me one day. I mean, it was a process, and it's still is now. But yeah, this is the one. It seems like a theme. And interesting, you mentioned that I felt like I was really born with it. I even during one rebirthing session or something, I experienced my own birth and how at the moment of birth, actually, I absorbed this from her. And it must have been going on before, like it's a generational thing, perhaps. Mm, but also, I've done cord cutting, and I've done different ways of working. Like I've sat there in soul conversation with her in meditation. I've done family constellations. I sat down and I wrote her a letter every day for 40 days so that my subconscious can register it. I've tried everything. So no wonder I was so happy to see this topic flash up. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Girgana. Amazing sharing. Thank you so much. Uh, we will reflect on it. So yeah, in so many elements you are pointing out. I will turn it to Uwe because it seems like he has something to connect to right there.
Yeah, it's just somehow I was like strings attached. I don't know. First, I was thinking about karma and stuff, but there is something. I have the opposite actually, which is kind of weird in a way. But um, I remember how this resonated with me when I traveled in the US, and then people told me, "Oh, yeah, no strings attached," and I was like, heck, this is so bad. I don't like this. No strings attached. This is not what I like. I like strings attached. I like to be connected, you know. I don't like this surface kind of, you know, a little bit, you know, saying hello and being full there and the next day not greeting anyone and stuff. This like no strings attached is really, you know, like I was like, man, you know, this drives me crazy. I want to go deep. I want to be connected, you know, like rather than no strings attached. So this is something that just came up when I listened to the previous explanations, and I think this is one which it troubles me now, where because I feel I have too many strings attached to too many people. So now I'm trying to, you know, like cut them loose again in order to, yeah, retrieve the energy to myself. So having strings attached, yeah, from my perspective.
Thank you.
That's an interesting point that you bring. That sometimes you actually would want a string attached.
Well, on purpose we use the strings attached because it is the matter of speech in English language, and as every manner of speech, it is super limited. And of course, it's meant to mean something, but when we look at it from the other side, it can have other connotations. So we will touch up on that. How are we actually connected to a language itself, which limits the way that we can even conceive things because we can only tell things through the forms that this language offers us. So strings attached is really one of those examples that we might not like something because we have experienced it in a certain way, but authors thought it up with completely different intention in mind. So really, really cool. I have noticed it also while I was living in US so many times.
Yeah, and in a way, if we do have strings, then better the ones we choose, right? The ones we choose and maintain, and it's all about. So
Consciousness.
we will dedicate this time to examine how can we become aware of our strings, and how can we choose which ones to maintain, which ones to reinforce, which ones to let go of, and how.
Exactly. Would anyone else like to share about your favorite strings?
I can share.
Yes, Ninki.
I will introduce myself as well because I'm new here. I think I'm from Amsterdam, Netherlands, and I was introduced by Eve. So I met her on the Gene Keys journey, and yeah, I would like to link this topic also to my Gene Keys journey, because my attachment, I guess, is in my core wound, kind of, or in my core. So the really my Achilles heel, I would say, and in Jinki's terms, it's about failure, and that's what what keeps coming up, and my experience with it is the fear of like before the fear of failure, there is this fear of going into the attachment, going into the, to even recognize that there is a string. So somehow you know it because your whole body is experiencing it. And then there is this mechanism, the fear of healing almost. That's how powerful I experience it. And it feels, but that's something I learned through the Jinkies, it feels as a string from like the lineage, like really. It's not attached to a person per se, although especially my mom represents it, but it's also from my father's line. So it really feels like something I wish or took upon me to clear, to work through in this lifetime. And Yeah. What would I say? Yeah, and like letting myself sink into the fear of the fear is the most healing for me. So then when I really sink into it, that I feel that the string just dissolves. However, what I'm experiencing is that it's a repetitive thing in this
Yep.
state where I am. So
Yeah.
I have to keep going with that.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Exactly. It's amazing that diving into the fear itself dissolves the string. That's exactly what it is.
Well, at least we get to the space from which we can do something about it. Otherwise, we are in another room looking at it almost like in a zoo through the glass, and we cannot access it. The drive, is this the hand? Yes.
And from the portal.
The realization that everyone and everything is a string. And I think also the realization for me a while back that everything that I've come in with, all of my habits, all of my patterns, all the cute stuff, all the comedy, all the things that I felt were funny, that were humorous and stuff, are actually things that I picked up from my cousin who I adored, and he picked them up from his father, who was an arrogant prick and a womanizer, and God knows all sorts of other things that I learned. But for years and years and decades, I thought this was just sort of the coolest intellectual and everything humor and stuff. And it's actually self-deprecating. And not only that, but it's making fun of minorities, it's making fun of nationalities, it's making fun of gender, it's making fun of everything. And it's made out to be like you're some kind of clever intellectual or something. And of course, the superiority and everything else comes into it and all of that. Where does that come from? Because we feel small and insignificant. And so, therefore, and then, of course, you spend half a lifetime running away from these things, only in everywhere you go, you find yourself. So that doesn't work after about 1 million kilometres and trashing 50 cars. So, and God knows how many plane rides, but you guys wouldn't know anything about that. So that's that sarcastic humour. See, exactly.
Yeah,
Perfect
it
example.
works.
Yes. But it's not actually funny, and I don't mean any disrespect, and it isn't actually funny. I mean, occasionally some people and some things, some situations are screaming out to be made fun of. And there's like time and place for things and stuff, but as a constant way of being and living and stuff, it's not a great way to kind of be, sort of. And it's also got to do with the whole egoic thing of and just I mean everybody knows this too when you're running out of mind and the mind's always comparing and the mind's always wants to be right and all of sort of things like that and just been listening to a lot of Alan Watts and lots of other sort of similar people and things like that and all basically about being in the present moment, how we're always chasing the future, which is the other string, I think, this wonderful string that the future is going to be better and greater and more of everything. And it's another dangling carrot you never get. Or if you ever get to it, it just becomes another now. So, yeah. So that's kind of basically stop chasing the future strings or trying to pull the past in or whatever. You know, how well did that ever turn out? So I think that's just another great reminder to be as much as possible in the present moment and to slow down. And I found that the slower I go, the actually faster things get, which is another really sort of interesting one as well. And so basically that, yeah, forget the future, man. It don't exist. It never will. And you're never going to catch it. And yet a lifetime's obsession for most of us, I think, and it's a complete waste of time and energy. But that's another thing they don't teach you at school for a very good reason. And we all know what that is. Okay.
Thank you, Jai. So many interesting parts you are actually sharing there. And the first one of them being the burden of having to live by this package that we have inherited that is not even ours, that sense of humor or wanting to kind of act in a certain way in certain situations. It's such a burden that we have to play it out, and it's not even ours. Very much ties to what Gergana had shared, that she has to live the way that her mother would without any apparent reason, even thinking this is us. And that is amazing once that we shed some light and we understand, oh my God, they have been doing this for so long and it doesn't even belong to us. So what are we without this? What are we really? And then we can start actually rebuilding the blocks that have been covered by those imposed behaviors.
Yeah, and one of giant strings in our lives is our intellect, and intellect is keeping us in a very specific level of existence and completely out of spontaneous experiences, because intellect wants to prove itself, as you said, superior and
or funny or humorous or whatever the hell it wants.
Yeah, dictates the ways and experiences.
Yeah, so beautiful sharings, guys. This is gives us amazing amount of material to reflect on. So maybe we can start from the first question, and it ties to some of your sharings already, and this is, do we come into this life completely free of those strings? And we don't want to actually qualify whether strings are good and bad. Like Uwe has said, sometimes we want to connect with certain people and maintain those strings. So there is no connotation that they are bad or good. The actual criteria that we want to impose here for our, as rules for us, is that we are aware of them. So what we don't want are the strings that are not. We are recording the sessions, Ninke, so there is going to be on YouTube. Yeah, so the one requirement is that we are aware of the strings. Once that we are aware of them, we can make our choice. Do I want to go with this, or I want to release this? But as long as we are being puppeteered by them, then we don't really have a choice how we act about this. So this is the beginning. And the first question is, do we come into this life strings free or not? And we would argue that we don't come into this life strings free because of karma. So we come with a certain karma that we have inherited from our lineages. And I will maybe share a picture that shows a little bit how many of the strings an average human being has on them. So these are our strings attached. And these are just some examples that I could have thought about, that we are able to think about. So as you can see here, there are ancestors, family, and nation. These are the things like female lineage, male lineage. These are the things that we come as we are born, like this collective memory that we carry. It's almost like how the bird knows how to fly and how the cat knows what is catness. So that's how we know what is the way of our survival base of our lineage. So this we come into this life with. It doesn't mean that we need it, but we have inherited this from our ancestors. Then when we are born, we get this reinforced by our grandparents, parents, and siblings in the family kind of structure. So these upper two categories are with us from year 0 to year 7. This is our entire world. We don't have anything else but this. So in these circumstances, we are actually being deeply tied into these strings. And you can imagine that strings attached at the end have a little hook. and how they get attached is that this hook has to find a place to hook into us, and those places where they hook are fears and insecurities. This is where the place is where the string is able to hook itself. And while we are from 0 to 7, of course it is the fear of being able to survive. Do we get food? Do we have to kind of humor these parents, otherwise they will not feed us. We are afraid that we're going to be left alone. It really is the family kind of culture being played out.
And the interesting thing is, like Uwe mentioned, the hypothesis that strings are coming from karma. Yes, it is. And so the moment to understand is that our allotted karma that we have come to kind of work out through this lifetime is the basis of how we choose the family, so that there's a resonance and match between the family and the actual family since we are born, actually set the stage for reenacting our karma that we need to process in this lifetime. And the interesting thing is that we cannot ignore that karma. We have come with it, and it's literally our great grandfathers and the whole lineage that are repeatedly acting and reenacting things through us, which is reinforced by the actual family where we are born, and they have kind of brought it to actual life within us. And we're pushed into action to actually do something about it. So we're pushed into these repetitive cycles of reactions until we say, like Gergana, oh, wait a minute, something's not okay here. And usually this realization comes in 30s, 40s, because then you have enough of observation behind to understand, wait a minute, I keep looping and I'm not even that happy. So then usually that midlife crisis is when we say, okay, something's not around here, and I have to see who am I really. And then the quest begins in examining and seeing like which parts are even authentic and which are not. So that karma thing is what is kind of dragging along our life's journey. And these lifetime strings are helping us to reenact that karma. Yeah. Including the nation, including the religion, the whole setting, the stage is set for us to either live as a puppet or realize that we're, puppeted and to start slowly regaining our original freedom.
Yeah, what Evia means by this is that as this rule of that our reality is reflecting who we are at every moment, well, whatever new strings we get attached actually react on how we interpret and how we act upon those initial karmic attachments that we brought into this life. And of course, these outside influences are, then steering our life in their direction if we allow it to happen. So pretty much how it works is that, as we go through life, second by second by second, our sensory tool, which is our body, which is this amazing sensory vehicle, is processing something like hundreds of billions of sensational data points per second. So can you imagine billions of data points per second that we register through our body and through, etheric senses, skin, organs, everything, mind, brain, all of this. So what happens is there are too many. So in order for them to reach the brain, they have to be filtered down to the acceptable number of data points that brain can deal with, which is kind of in linear thinking something like 10,000 per second, let's say. So how do we go from billions to 10,000 per second? Is that we filter those through our 5 senses, which all cut some of those sensations into the parts that we can, they're cutting them through the visual data, touch, sensory data, taste data, and so forth. So when we filter them down and they come to the brain, then there comes an interpretation. An interpretation is that key point where we interpret what has arrived to the brain by what we know. And what we know has already been conditioned.
Yeah, and
through
that's the memory of ourselves and memory of the ancestors that we live by, and which sets actually the tone on how we interpret the data. To the rainy day, yeah, for example, like there are a million of ways to interpret the rainy day, and how, whether you consider it as a bad weather or good weather
or a threat,
or no weather.
My tribe may consider it a threat because we live somewhere where the flash floods were common in the ancient history, so we perceive rain as a threat, so we have to protect ourselves. So you see, already a burden, already we are away from having neutral way to look into that event. So there are these 3 things. There is the quality and number of data points that we are able to have access to. Second is the way how we interpret them, which we can interpret based on the current instinct tells me to run away from it, so I start running. I haven't even considered deeper ways to react to rain. And the third is the decision that we make based on the interpretations that we had. So these 3 points are actually how we determine literally our destiny and outcomes in life all together, based on the quality of data and number of data, the interpretation of the data, and what we choose to do with them. So literally, this is the topic that we're talking about.
And why we're going in so much detail, because actually there is the key. If you understand where the strings are attached really, on that level you can also start dissolving them. And they are attached exactly in this moment where the mind interprets the data and starts qualifying automatically by compulsion, starts interpreting and creating the reaction, because we're very fast at absorbing the data and providing a reaction to it. Like as Jai said, there's a situation that screams to be made fun of. This is observation of the situation, and for some people it's automatically to be made fun of. For some people it means nothing, and for some people they would maybe cry about the same situation. So the way that we react is conditioned with all these strings. And if only we can catch that moment of data input and stretch this moment a little longer before we react, this is the golden space where we can realize who and how wants to react. And in that space you can examine, is it like truly your reaction? Is it mom? Is it culture? Is it habit? Is it
one of these?
Yeah.
And look how many it could be. So is it me, and this is me in the center, that blue dot? Or is it one of these things here that are actually hijacking me and making these decisions for me?
And usually the guilty one here is memory and intellect, because memory tells us how things used to be, gives us background, and prevents us from like a fresh decision making. It's based on not only memory about ourselves, but the ancestors' memory about the same topic. For example, let's take money. What's the memory about money? Ancestors' memory will always be that there's not enough, it's hard work, and it can be taken away or lost anytime. So it already comes with a fear. So you don't even have a chance to have your reaction to failure or to loss of money, because there's this huge input of the memory about this topic that comes conditioning the reaction.
Yeah, money is one of those huge hooks that we all have, well, most of us have hooked into ourselves through that early conditioning. And it's one of the most useful ones to get out of, because it really puppeteers our life to a huge extent.
Claudia, you have a question or comment?
Hi everyone. Yes, I'm shocked about the synchronicities about this conversation, because I've been dealing with this a lot and realizing that my how I live my world is how I live inside my body. So how it is work. So I was late with Peppa's work, and so I'm still doing it and catching up with it. So all my energy is it's blocked from my legs down, and when all of a sudden what you just said, I've been very very present with how my energy sits in my body and how I'm, because since already 2 years ago you've been talking about healing the body, going in the body, and I if my perineum rises, if I stay, the breath opens, and all of a sudden my reactions completely change. So the mind loses itself. It cannot anchor into that space where you say, "Oh, he said that," or "He thinks about it." I'm trying really hard to be light, or whatever it is that the mind does that I'm used to from my parents. I go into the state of presence, and then that mind thought, just that vibration of the mind settles, and then I don't know anymore. I don't know how to react in the world because I'm present with what is happening, and those patterns I watch them from afar and saying that cannot be right. That's not the way I used to act. It's not healthy for me. I want to let it go, and so I don't know what substitute it with. I don't know so I keep asking myself, what is my highest good? And but only through the breath, because now I reached that point where my mind is really trying to get over me. So that negativity, that kind of I don't know, it's the ego. I don't know, it's my upbringing, of shoulds and have tos. It's I'm in this battle now of what you just said, and battling through just being present. And when and it's difficult because my body is used to be sitting, my soul and myself inside my body in a certain way and reacting in a certain way, that when I stop it and then I breathe and my perineum rises, then my breath opens, my diaphragm sinks in, my belly opens, my shoulders go down, my breath opens, and all of a sudden I stay into kind of a 30-degree, and I breathe into the space of nothingness. All of a sudden I see there is this there's a new me, there's a new my true self. And then all of a sudden it lasts for a few seconds, and then all of a sudden my mind kicks in and it tries to grab me again.
Yep.
And it's so exhausting. So I just kind of to share that, because there must be a way out and kind of like a breaking point, because right now I feel like I'm in a huge transition, in a crossroad, and it's so it's how long it's gonna be, but anyway. So
Wow.
there you have it.
Wow.
Thank you, Claudia.
Claudia, you hit the nail there. Exactly. You explained in your own ways actually the whole point that we wanted to get across, which is this deeper intelligence which is beyond the mind, reaching the cosmic mind, which is before and beyond any reactions. And it's so amazing, because actually I wanted to recommend everyone the Sadhguru's book about karma. It's amazing book. It's just a pleasure as always, in Sadhguru's little bit humorous style explaining what karma is and how to, get out of the loop. And I would really want to read this little passage which tells about this experience that you experienced on yourself. So the Sadhguru says that like if you really want to reach that space which is beyond the intellect, so it's called chitta. It's the basis of our true lives, of our actual lives, and it's the deepest level of the mind. It is awareness, aliveness, a profound intelligence that lies beyond intellect, beyond memory, beyond judgment, beyond karma, beyond all divisions. It is the intelligence of existence itself, the living mind of the cosmos. And in yogic tradition, it is said that once you distance yourself from the compulsions of your karmic software, as well as the identifications of your intellect, you are in touch with this unclouded consciousness. And only when we access this chitta is self-transformation possible. So that what you just described is the true point of self-transformation.
Moments of touching the chitta point. So you had moments of touching that deeper, non-conditioned part of the cosmic intelligence, and then the mind wants to take over. So it's really the training here.
And the mind says, but what do I do with it? How do I react?
Yeah, the training is to stay and to make these moments of touch with the universal intelligence longer. So for the beginning, you'll have fractions of a second or few seconds, and then we really work on prolonging this. Second per day is already great, because minute per day is great. If we are able to go hours, well, we are in the state of samadhi, because the moments that we are connected with this place, it's almost like we can imagine that it is the oil drilling spot, and we have reached the point beyond, we have reached the actually source of cosmic intelligence, and we try to stay in it, and to avoid the mind and these drives to take us out.
And in this way, actually, not only like the mind will say, oh, you're going to become impractical, what will you do, how will you do, but actually what is the result of being able to hang out in this universal consciousness space is that you are able to function in the world, to be in the world but not from it, and that is the whole difference. And also the transcendence of also Muji is pointing to the same thing, actually accessing this universal intelligence which is beyond intellect.
Well, Chris Beish is also talking about it. Chris Beish, through LSD and his experimenting with psychedelics, has actually reached the point of cosmic consciousness. There are many different ways to get it. Of course, if we use substances, then we cannot do it by ourselves. That is a drawback of any substances, but at least it gave the access so he can experience what it is like. But the ultimate way is to do it on our own and to actually touch those moments and then to make them longer. So when you talk about, well, is it practical? What am I going to do there? And how am I going to solve my day-to-day duties? Well, you can imagine that, again, one of these is asking. Who is asking this question? Well, one of these. They are asking this question. What does it mean to be practical? What does it mean to have a job? What does it mean to make money? It is all, practicalities that are imposed on us to actually serve a certain way of existence.
How am I going to be perceived if I change?
Well, you can look, how am I going to be perceived? You see who can be that? Well, here, friends and peers. This is coming from them and through maybe corporations. So these two are actually fears that are making us ask these questions. But the point is to really find that sacred spot in our daily practice where we can be detached from all of these. and then start kind of existing from that point and becoming aware of all of these and then making decisions out of the neutral place.
Yeah, it's not realistic to say that we can become stringless
Maybe we don't want to
overnight,
even, like
and
Ove says, yeah.
and even though we feel like we don't have many strings, we still have, and we still probably will forever, because that's the nature of us being human and existing in this
Yeah,
world.
and
But this space, this golden space of awareness, before the intellect and memory take over and interpret things for us, if we can cultivate that space and plunge into that cosmic awareness, which that is what gives us the freedom of choice, whether we want to act upon the string or whether we choose anything different. And it's especially important in these days where there's so many strings being pulled in all directions through fears and informations and disinformations, that the only best thing that we can really do for ourselves is the cultivating access to this eternal wisdom that we all have inside of us, before we're pulled into a direction. And when we look on a daily basis, so how those strings look like in interaction between people, there's always fear or need that is the energy that maintains the string alive. When we see between partners, for example, there are strings attached, the strings of giving and the strings of taking. And when we speak about those cords, the famous cords that attach to people, and it's very hard to let go of, what the cord is made out of are the strings, maybe 1, 2, 3, 10, 50 different kind of strings of needs and wants and expectations and memories and etc. Yeah, like the Balinese,
yeah, I want to
these-
show this. I don't know if it's going to be visible, but these kind of ceremonial cords that have several different colored strings tied in together and then put. So it's not one string. When you talk about cords with the person, there are multiple points of connection that we are kind of weaved together and plugged into both persons. So this is going to be important when we talk about the technique, how to actually disentangle ourselves from those strings. It's interesting to understand that part of it is ours and going to another person, part of it is other persons going into us. So
and the cord itself is made out of several completely different strings. That's why it's very difficult to kind of have a clean cut with a long-term partner, because the cord has grown to the proportions of a boat anchor cord made out of many little strings.
and yeah, just to mention, the cord cutting doesn't really work, because detaching that string only, like physically at that level of consciousness, like the parts of the cord, so to speak, can imagine that it is like octopus's tentacle. It will regrow. So just cutting doesn't work. It will like simply regrow. So we have to have a little bit more profound way to deal with that, and we will share what it is. It's
to touch a little bit, because it's very popular to do the cord cutting, and it brings a sense of empowerment for a little while. But actually, when you think in terms of energy, we think it's a cord, but actually it's more of a cloud. Yeah, it's the energy that unites two people or person and a concept, for example, or person or a substance like alcohol, or person and a religion or a church egregore, for example. So it's a very dense cloud, and there's no way you can just wave and command it to disappear, because actually the hooks, imagine if you would physically cut the cord in the middle, then that means that the hook part is still on your side and on the other side. So what the energy is looking to do is to reconnect, remagnetize, resolidify, and become stronger, so as to, you know, make it even more unbreakable. So it's safe to say that every cord cutting actually reinforces the whole concept, because it's not so easy to get out of this. And when you think for addictions like alcohol, cigarettes, coffee, or something, it's a huge string attached. Attached to what? Attached to our senses. So most of the strings are actually playing on the senses and the pleasure of the senses connected to interpretation of the sensation. So the alcohol addicts, well, of course, they are looking forward to the sensation that it brings, yeah. And plus that energy cord is so powerful because it's fueled by a giant egregore that's collecting all the energy of the users. So any kind of addiction to anything at all is usually coming from a big and very powerful cloud. So these cords that are attached to the egregores are the hardest ones to get rid of, because of course they don't want to lose a client, yeah. So that cloud is not interested in letting go a single soul off the hook. So they're aggressively trying to, you know, attack senses and the mind. And, you know, the syndrome of withdrawal, it's purely attacking the senses to, you know, make the person hook back. So that's why kind of removing a dependent person from the substance is not really efficient, because the egregore will fight by all means to hook it back. And I think only the way of taking the power back will work in this case with no consequences. So we have to understand that some strings have these powerful entities at the end, and that's why they are very difficult to break. And it's not our, you know, failure if we don't manage to unhook with the first time. Same things are institutions and jobs and marriages, which are very strong cords that are empowered by a huge energy behind. So, of course, nations and religions are the cords on themselves, and most of you have kind of gotten out of them anyways.
Well, at least for the most part, there are parts that we still carry, and maybe not so consciously, but you know, like what is the patriotism of a nation, or, you know, how do we do things around here, you know, and these expectations of me being, for example, or even, you know, like becoming of a nation is bringing a collective karma of that nation. For example, when we did past life regressions, I saw that a lot of people who were, for example, from colonial powers had huge number of past life episodes as colonizers and, you know, slave owners, and you know, like coming into those nations and mistreating the whole indigenous population, and then having consequences in this life based on what had happened back then. So this is how we carry the karma of a nation until we dissolve it in this incarnation.
So one of the undeniably strongest chords is the family and ancestors, because that's included in that karma package that we have to work out.
Yeah, right here.
And they are not easy to disentangle. So as you said, Gergana, it took you so long to even understand what's going on, and then also big time to do something about it. And those who have followed our Meet the Parents course, you saw how obvious and non-obvious at the same time is the whole concept of being our parents. And as Sadhguru says in this book, you do not come from nothing. You come from the template of your parents. So you have to be ready that, want it or not, you are the template of your parents to begin with, until you start sorting it out. And as Claudia, maybe it's a little bit late in life, but it's such a liberation to understand, oh my God, like I have a possibility of destiny of my own, and not only the repetitive reactions of my ancestors. And Hannah, you are also a beautiful example of working through the grandma's limitations. And like, if anyone even present in this group, if you would for example go through that Meet the Parents course, you would see how big time that ancestor karma is wanting to be worked through you. So it's actually a good idea to pay attention and to just do it, because there's no way around it. But when you are aware, the doing of it becomes much easier.
Well, yeah, we have pretty much worked with so many people on this that we have found really a shortcut that we could come up with. So definitely doesn't take any more years to do this. It takes 5 weeks. That's it.
Yeah, and for example, Jai, we don't know. We don't want you to lose the sense of humor, but maybe that would kind of transform with the freedom of not having to react with sarcasm to everything that comes your way. Or, when that compulsion to react from the ancestors is gone, then there's the space of having like the best of it anyways, and not being obliged to act in a certain way. So
then like the jive sense of humor can actually come up, because this is like your own, not the one that has been inherited from the uncle or whoever was this fun-loving person. But at least that was a little funny. In my example, I had like, my father had the sense of humor that is very far from anybody thinking that this is a sense of humor. It's really kind of not the right timing, and it's not funny at all. But then, I would find myself kind of tease, like my friend who has been in a situation, he has like some problem with parking or whatever. I would tease her in a way that I was hated the most when my father would make that way of humor with me. So it's like, I even don't like it. I hate it, and I find myself doing it. So it was really, really crazy how it works. It's really cool to get rid of that and find our own expression. So, yeah.
So then the string that goes to the future, as you said, Jive, that's also a big hook, because all of the clouds that want to manipulate with people, they're using the chord of the future to drive people in a certain direction. And that's something we need to be aware of as well, because we don't even know if that future is in store for us, because it's we live one day at a time, and that's about as far as we can see. So recognizing the chord from the future, and recognizing that what we think of future is only the best version of our memories that we project further. Let's say we always see the future brighter than what we have right now, so we project ourselves as more successful, more rich, or in a partnership. So we always project something that we know, but in a better quality. So in a way, it's again dragging the loop of the memory and placing it somewhere along our way in the future and working towards it.
Yeah.
But what about the things that you don't know, the things that you don't have the memory of? how about that, the template that you are compelled to follow would fall apart, and you have completely different kind of possibility. I don't know if a major invention happens, and suddenly we can, I don't know, time travel or bilocate or something. You haven't included it in your future as a possibility because you don't have a memory of it. The only thing you can imagine is what you have already heard of, seen, or lived. And the intellect adjusts it to kind of create that string in the future on which your best experience will be magnified and presented as, a cool thing to have in the future.
In other words, if we are to kind of go back to how Sadhguru sees it, is, you think you have your dreams, and we have our wildest dreams for the future. So what he would say is, well, I would not wish on anyone that their dreams become fulfilled, because what they could dream of has been inherited with this program from whichever of these strings they have been conditioned. So the best thing that I can desire and wish for people is to have their dreams shattered, so that they can actually start having real options in life and not something based on what they could have imagined before. So it's an interesting thing to consider. Having your dreams shattered is maybe a better option than having them fulfilled, because they might be limiting.
Yeah, so as that karma drags along for our lifetime, and we do have to work through it, once we, it's like the visual image could be a wild horse dragging you in a cord behind, kicking, screaming, running, or dangling on the dust. You will have to go there. But at some point you can realize and get on the top of the horse and continue the karmic program, because without that you cannot exist in this world. Continue, but on the top of the horse. So the trick here is when a puppet wakes up and understands and starts following where the cords are leading, it can throw the whole thing around, and from being puppeted become its own puppeteer, right? So, and decide the scenario of the life. And this is, we realize, the very important concept in everybody's lives. How do you become crafter of your destiny, but really in every level? Well, by understanding what strings are attached, where do they lead, and how you can reclaim them one by one, and how can you become the leader of your own strings if you can't, completely dissolve them at all times. And that's where the true freedom lies. It's not in how many options do you have in the world ahead of you, but how many options you have right now. How many options of reactions do you have right now? For any trigger that comes in your life right now, today, in how many different ways are you capable of reacting? And do you have a space also of where you do not react? That is the measure of your freedom, and not on how many physical opportunities are present or not. So again, going deeper into awareness and self exploration and knowledge is the only key to the freedom and to this beautiful state of connection to the universal mind that Claudia is experiencing every now and then. And of course, there are exercises leading to that.
Yeah, I'm thinking of sharing again that interview with Chris Beish with you guys, who has gone through levels and levels and levels of universal consciousness, just so that you get an illustration of what it may feel like to be outside of human condition. We cannot even imagine. If we have not touched that place, we are so deeply part of the drama that's happening in our life that we don't even understand what is 5 levels above this five floors, or for example 50 floors. What's 50 floors above this theater that we are playing? So this to me was very helpful to kind of, instinctively we know what Chris Beige says is when he was on the level of universal consciousness that creates universes, for example. But this is not like mind experience. He was that. He, in this work that he has done, he has been the creative drive that creates universes. And he had said that he had found that finally he feels at home, because we have in our memory, in our cells, we have a memory of being this as well. But so loud are distractions that we have not even taken the time to go that deep. And he has found that finally I feel how I'm supposed to feel. I instinctively knew that this is something that is possible, but I had no idea how to get there and what it is. And that there we go back to these trillions of sensory experiences every second that we end up filtering ourselves from, because we don't have the contextual framework to put it in anything that we can know something about, but it's there. So on one level, each of us are the building forces of the universe as we are. So we just completely blank it out because the brain doesn't know what to do with that. So this is why we are bringing this up, so that we kind of make ourselves aware that these places and these experiences are possible, and that we can at least touch them. If we are in this life, on this planet, why not go and touch these places as well and see how it feels to be a creator of universes? Then we can come back, look back into the world and see, what kind of the decisions I can now make, having had all these experiences. And the place and context are going to be vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
Fabiana, you wanted to share?
Yes, hi. So it really resonates, and at the same time, I wonder, how do we deal with kind of the pain behind that? Because I just had an experience, well, I had it a couple of times, but like last week was really strong. And then a couple of weeks ago, we talked about, during Lionsgate, about this star origin, right? You notice how that is really, really present in me personally. And so I had this experience opening a star portal, doing a ritual, and I really felt like that immensity and that infinity and like that being there, and it's like, this is it. This is the real me, this is the essence. And it was amazing. But at the same time, it was like cathartic. Like I couldn't stop crying, because then it was like, I don't want to be here. It's like, how do we keep this sense? But then we realize, but I'm on Earth, and I'm in this life, and how am I gonna deal with this? So it was that saudades, and then I was like, oh my God, I'm here in this body with my karma.
Yeah. Land it back, yes.
This is fantastic.
Yes,
point you are
exactly.
bringing. And Chris Beisch's answer to this is exactly why he stopped his 20-year research, because he felt such saudades, like you say, such longing for the oneness with the beloved, oneness with that, let's say, center of the divine universe, that it was heartbreaking to have to come back. So in order to continue having this incarnation here, he had stopped his research and he said, okay, it's time for me to now ground and integrate all that I have done so far. And his guides, what they have told him is, well, you had 20 years worth of work, now you have 20 years worth of grounding to do because the discrepancy is so huge. But this is his experience.
Yeah, but also, if you listen to Ramdas, he says, okay, he went to India, he had this cosmic opening and heart bursting open and this, and then he says, but how can I stay there? it always comes back to the usual thing, how to make that state last. And this is exactly what we're trying to tell, that you have these moments of opening, the moments of connection with the universal mind, and this is it. That is real. That's real you. And then you click back in your karma template, and you have to roll again, reaction and the same kind of loopings. So there's no way to blend both until you realize what are those strings, where are they pulling you, who is at the end of those strings. When you start sorting them out and say, let me see what's at the end of the string, this is where you are starting to minimize the pull of the karma. And when you are no longer in face glued into the spin that's out of your control, then you have this distance of understanding how to be in the world but not of it. Yeah.
What this means, how to be in the world and not of it, is this: when we are back in this, from where we have reached those cathartic moments that Fabiana is saying, let's remember that when we are in cathartic moments, this is reality. And let's call that reality, and not call, we are back in reality. No, we are back in a theater.
We're back to work. Yeah.
We are back in a theater where we need to work things out. But reality was there, because that's where we felt more at home. And this is where we feel, well, here we have some work to do. And let's come and understand that we have chosen, our souls have chosen this moment in time to incarnate on this planet because we have some key roles to play out in this grotesque theater that is going on, as we are seeing. It's getting grotesque by the day. But we are here because we have some key point to play out. And if we understand that, and if we have our way back to the reality, then we can go up and down at will. And it's not like, we don't feel like we are victims of the storm on the sea.
Mm-hmm. So now we can speak in practical terms. So what can we do about it? And number one of practical step about all sorts of chords and strings is to realize and take responsibility, saying, okay, so most of them might not be mine, hello grandpas and hello grandmas. Okay, there's a reason that I'm kind of working out your unrealized things. So fine, let's do it. So recognizing that, it's not entirely yours, but this is what it is. So, and being constructive about it. Realizing that, we're made out of our parents and their templates and their fears, and, we're supposed to work it out. So accepting the mission, in a way, accepting the job, and starting to be constructive about it. Then step number 2, realizing that every string has 2 ends. Yeah, the one that is pulling you, imagine if you had more power and you would be pulling it down. Yeah, so every string between any 2 things, this competition of rope pulling, like at the end one end pops
overpowers
out. So it's a matter of power on each end of the string. And this is what happens in long-term relationships, that when one starts pulling, the other follows, and then whoever lets loose. So it's this game of coming back and forth. So when there's a more power on your end of the string, let's say you are in control of the string, but if you want to completely get rid of the string, and we already said the cutting is not efficient because the remains stay at both ends and regrow very fast. So the thing that you can do is to imagine that if you have this one end of the string and you would keep pulling with determination, you would eventually, like break it out from the other end, because it's yours. When you recognize that your string, whoever attached it to you, as long as, and it's the basis of the implant work, uh, whoever has entered your system with whatever kind of hook or string, it's yours. If it's yours, you can do something about it. So you would take the end of this cord and you would be pulling it your way, saying, this is mine.
Imagine a
all
kite.
the way. So I do exactly what I want with this string, and I keep pulling it back towards me, and I absorb it. Like, like when you are pulling the anchor back on the boat, it's exactly like this. Just keep pulling it back in. And knowing that that cord, because it's in your end, it's yours. And when you're rewinding it back to yourself, it doesn't have any attachment to the other end anymore.
So the only
Because you have
reason
taken it back.
reason why it is actually having the power, well, it's impossible to see, is because it is entangled both ways. If you take your part, if it's kind of white and red, you take the white part and reabsorb it in you. The red becomes loose and kind of goes with the other person. That was theirs. But what actually kept it active was all these loops and loops and loops, how the cord has been made. So that's why the point is, I don't cut it because I lose part of my energy. No, you retract your part completely, own it, and then recycle the use of your energy. We don't cut and allow part of my energy to go away. So you retract it consciously, collect it, and then reabsorb it into your energy body so that it can become something else in your life. When this is done, the other part of the cord, just like the loose balloon, flies off and goes their own way.
So when you apply this technique to dissolve cords between a person that you cannot really disentangle with on intellectual terms, you'll see that the charge between the people has dissipated, because there's no more energy. You have retracted all your energy. It can be also it can be money cord, it can be emotional cord, any kind of cord. But once you retract it and transform it back into pure creative power, well, this is just collecting what's yours back to yourself. And you can do it with any topic at all. And I would like to give examples from what we have heard here, that, for example, that fear of failure, which is the cord that would keep one, doing certain things in order not to fail. So when we track, we feel the cord of the fear of failure, and we start looking, so where does it lead to? Where is that string attached? Is it attached in my parents who projected some kind of failure on me? So where is it attached? So once we follow the fear and find who holds the end, that's the moment where we start retracting it and saying, well, this is mine, entirely my responsibility, and I'm choosing to absorb it back and dissolve through my heart into, the pure creative potential. And like this we can do with absolutely any concept that we're attached to, including the substances, including the churches, including what Lisa was attached to, self-righteousness. You can even reabsorb the self-righteousness cord so that it doesn't drive you. And most of the time, origins of those cords about ourselves are sitting in our dark twin, our inner saboteur that we have talked about, who is actually not very interested in our self-liberation. So Ninke had...
you have something to add or ask?
Yeah, thanks. I love this conversation. It's so awesome. I was just thinking when you said like pull something back what's yours. The way I feel it, but maybe you can add to that, is what feels right to me is to just let go. And I don't focus so much on what's mine, because as soon as I'm feeling that I start to pull back something, it's like there is this tension again, or this fighting energy again. And if I let go, it's kind of like in the surrender, kind of like let yourself sink to the bottom of the ocean. There is this kind of refining what's mine, actually. So yeah, for me it feels very much like just letting go and not focusing anymore to pull back what's mine. Or so I don't know if it's clear or
Yeah.
Well, you remember the game of the pulling the cord? If one lets go, the others fall anyways. It's a matter of energetic proportions. Yeah, if you are fighting with something that's way bigger than you, then letting go is a solution. But very few people are actually able to truly let go. They can pretend that they let go. They can pretend to, okay, it doesn't matter. The only criteria that shows have you really truly let go of things is that your reaction has fundamentally changed to things. And not from the intellect, not from the mind, not saying, okay, I will not react to it anymore. As I'm thinking of you, Hannah, with your saga about inheritance, that, you're most probably, you don't have choice but to let go because there's nothing you can do. But is it intellectual letting go, and or is it like a true complete surrender? Okay, I give it out, and whatever happens. So when we speak about rolling it back in, is when your power is somehow hijacked in a situation. Yeah. So sometimes letting go is also letting go the power with it. So you kind of put yourself in this okay, there's nothing I can do about it, so I let it out, but the situation is not changing. If you have truly let go of your end of the string, the situation would dissolve because it cannot exist without you being involved.
Without your involvement, exactly.
So if letting go doesn't work, then we start pulling back. And many years ago, I created a code which was called the it was about recovering the money that is blocked somewhere, because money is also part of our power. So that code, the function of the code was that meditating with that code would actually bring that money which belongs to you back to you, which is basically about energy. And a friend of mine was successfully using it in her money workshops, and every participant was using that code because they all had bad divorce situations, bad inheritance situations, and really long-standing entanglements where money is the cord that binds people who are incompatible together. So Hannah, thinking of you, that money cord unites people who would otherwise never be in the same kind of game, not even in the same picture. So that code of, we called it the money dragon because it's a mythological creature that actually goes between dimensions. So when those fragments of one's own energy have been retrieved from the situation, all kinds of magic were happening, where suddenly, the judgments have been done, like divorce is pronounced, or suddenly the other party gives up, especially about the debts also, so many people are hooked onto another person who doesn't give back their money, and there's no way to force them, and it's like a permanent entanglement keeping them together. So retracting back what's yours is retrieving those missing or scattered pieces of your own energy, without which the whole situation cannot exist. The whole like a blocked entanglement cannot exist. So it has worked very, very well in these like very visible entrapments of power, and also between unsolvable relationship issues. Retracting the power works much more efficiently than letting go, because sometimes you cannot let go because the other keeps coming back and attacking. So then the disentangling, you have to adapt to the actual situation. For example, Gergana, your situation with the mother, you cannot really let go of it, because you can let go, but it's in you. There's nothing that you can actually shake off because it's in you. It's part of you. So the only thing is you can eat it up. So you can say, okay, bring it on. I'm transforming and absorbing. It's mine. It has become mine, and I transform it to the point where it's entirely I have entirely processed, digested, and pooped it out.
The example of these are, guys, spiders. Spiders have tremendous energy spent to make those spider webs. So when the spider decides to get rid of his spider web, what he does is he eats it back. He eats the substance back, swallows the whole thing in order to have this, some other use for it. So this is the same example. And what Evi is trying to explain is that, we can decide to let go of things. One level is mental level, another level is energetic level. On energetic level, this is complete different energetic work where we energetically really release it. And then the third level is actualizing the new state. So even after we have energetically released, it still is not part of our everyday life until we have started walking the new path, new timeline, with this previous cord being non-existent. And when we start making first steps, then we are kind of getting into the new groove, creating the new groove of our life that is the beginning of the new history line for us, so to speak.
Another practical example is like unsellable house. There are houses that you're trying to sell and they just wouldn't sell, and they're just not happening because there's strong cord between the person and the house. And in that case, letting go, it doesn't work because the house is staying, on your shoulders. It just doesn't work. So retracting all parts of oneself from the house that's has served the purpose is actually liberating the house to be lived by someone else. If it's what we can let go of is expectations, unfulfilled dreams, and things that we have created with our minds. So for example, the failure, yes, it's a concept. It's not a thing, it's a concept, and we can let go of the need to control. Those are the categories of things that we can let go of because they we have grabbed them. We are holding them in place. So if we release, then it just pops out. But other things that are actual material existence and people, the retracting the power works more efficiently because it's in a different category, I would say.
Just one thing, that's a difference you make, right? A distinction is when it's material, you would suggest to retain your energy to
It's about the strength of the other thing.
Yeah.
Because when you are fighting with your inner demons and your own created concepts, you have invited them. You have kind of called them in, and like the fear of failure, you have materialized it in your life. So you have called it in. You can also let go of it. So it cannot hold you because it doesn't exist.
Failure doesn't exist as itself. It is interpretation of the word that kind of ties to some interpretation of the
Concept.
concepts, but failure in itself does not exist. It is just an experience that you have gone through and probably had amazing good things to learn from, but it is classified there partially because of the language and partially because of the culture. So these are the
Yeah.
two things that have actually qualified it for you. Otherwise, it was simple life experience.
For example, abandonment is a concept. A person that impersonates the abandoner is another thing. So you can let go of the
Being
concept.
abandonable.
Yeah. So, you know, when you don't want to let go of a partner because you are afraid to be abandoned. So there are two things happening there. One is the person that you don't want to let go of, but actually what you are attached to is the fear of abandonment. So the fear of abandonment is something that you have created all by yourself and holding on to. So you can release it and it pops out. Yeah? But the person that would impersonate the abandoner, that one we retract our power from, because there's a physical interaction. Yeah, you have not created it all by your imagination. It's an actual person with actual physical energy, and exchange goes both ways. So a successful end of relationship is when we can let go of the person and of the concepts that that person represents to us. Same for like mothers and fathers. We can let go of the concepts that they mistreated me. It's a concept. It's not a fact. Mistreated me is interpretation of the fact. So we can let go of the concept of what they did to me, and then we can draw our power back from the actual person that we have, you know,
which is actual energetic. So energetic part we have to retract inside. The imaginary, like mind aspect, we can let go of. So that's the difference.
makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, yeah. Totally. Yeah. Thank you.
And being aware of those proportions of energies in a relationship, in a friendship, and actually that's the Uwe's mentioned chords that he would like to have, is also kind of nurturing and feeding the connection that you know we're excited about. Yet always being aware of if there's not a flavor of dependency or manipulation to it, because that grows in very quickly. So for example, yeah, like you Gergana, with your in situation with your mother, you can let go of concepts and retract your power from this, while being aware that what came from her to you needs to be recycled, and you will release the new version of you'll be the next generation, next version of that, and not being afraid of you know, who you will discover yourself to be. Yeah. And Hannah, for your situation of entanglement with the inheritance, your energy is weaved in, want it or not, in that entanglement with the ex-wife and the sister and this and that. So really claiming it back. So it's a little bit ritual, of course. You know, you need to focus on clearly feeling that cord and retracting back what's yours, because you have all rights to that. Is the way to go. There's nothing you can do about everyone else, but following that cord and understanding if there are any concept attached to that physical cord, anything around money or power, that is a very interesting part to examine. So whenever you feel stuck to a person, to a place, to a concept, to a habit, to a country, anything at all, you can always use this simple awareness of I realize that I'm hooked onto something, or something or someone has hooked onto me. I recognize that what's in me is mine. I follow the cord. I see who is pulling it, and I just start taking it back, while letting go of concepts that got me hooked in the first place. So this creates more and more space to have a life where we have any power of decision over our choices. Because as Sadhguru says, when we live this life, we're not. It's like driving while having 100 shots of vodka. Yeah, so you are driving, but with such a huge
haze of other influences.
Yeah, haze, that everything you do is with this extra difficulty of judgment and suffering and expectations and a whole bunch of things. So more we can cut off the main disturbances, more we can actually see clear and even get closer to this state of being that you mentioned, of just cosmic inner peace and alignment with all that is. So I guess what the state that we can reach when we are conscious about this is a state of human being that for which we are intended to be. Otherwise we would just be looping through our ancestors' conditionments, for the time that's given us to us on earth, and there's no evolution. So in a way we have to do it, and in a way we can make it as easy and as fun as possible.
And fun, exactly. This is actually always our approach. If it's a hard inner work, well, let's make it fun and laugh about it a little bit. And actually, to answer Fabiana, your note that there is a suffering that's connecting to going into those deeper places. Actually, what happens is that there is this collective suffering that we have to meet and allow in order to always get to the deeper and deeper place. It's almost like it's the purification phase and the opening of the new depth phase. So these phases are going hand in hand. We have to go to purification phase where we witness and sometimes feel the collective suffering in order to get deeper and sense even deeper levels of cosmic existence. And once that we kind of understand that what comes after suffering is even deeper levels of bliss, well, then we know why we are going through this purification. So, yeah.
We were feeling, the reason why we brought up this topic today is that we feel that world is going to be an intense place for the months to come. And it's somehow very important to know that there's a place beyond the strings and beyond the intellect and beyond the future and beyond what to do and how to do. And if you find that place and that awareness, it's going to be easier to navigate the little turbulence that's ahead of us, because the strings will be pulled with huge violence, and more we are in touch with our own inner truths about things, the easiest it will be to go through.
And to interpret them and to really look at it as the grotesque theater rather than reality, which is there in with the function of helping humanity reach the higher levels of consciousness. Because, like the more peaceful way was there all along, thousands of years, but we have proven to be a lazy species. to actually take that work. So now comes the period where we will be forced to do some of this work. So, it's just understanding that this is now the phase to go through. It's a difficult, a little bit uncomfortable class to take.
Yeah, so Fabian, you're saying, I guess, acceptance of the suffering is the key. Well, acceptance that there is suffering in the world, like Buddha's 8 concepts. There is suffering, but there are good news that there's a way out of suffering. And the way out of suffering is awareness that everyone has their choice of how to interpret. Do you interpret your reality as something bad, thus creating your own suffering? Or you understand that it is what it is, unpleasant as it might be, but it still is what it is. So we're creating bad weather by our interpretation of, because it's not convenient to us. Yeah. So we're the only makers of our suffering. So when we look, and as Ninke said, when we look into that suffering, like dive deep into it and examine it, it's like cold water. It stops being cold. It's, it becomes what
A
it
sensation.
is. It's a sensation. And it doesn't provoke all the thought process with it. Yeah. And as Jaiv mentioned about being in the present moment because that's all there is. Well, actually, that's true. There is only this present moment and things as they are, except that we don't really have a capacity to see them for what they are because we're compelled to see them through judgments and
we are
labels.
compelled to jump to the conclusions about them. Jumping to the conclusions, and what is jumping to the conclusion is that our strings react before we have a chance to go deeper and actually react from a deeper place. So that's what it is. It's allowing the extra 10 seconds to go deeper and understanding from a deeper perspective and higher perspective.
And Claudia is, with this work, we are healing 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. Forward, we don't have to care so much about forward. We certainly make it easier for the immediate generation to come. But the generations backward, it's, I don't know if it's exactly 7, but it's a whole bunch of grandmas that are actually have piled up these automatic reactions and they haven't been able to get out of the loop. So the one who is on the chain that can break the loop actually liberates everything that has been behind. Imagine like a string of pearls. If the last pearl unhooks from the string, well, all the pearls fall off, however many there were. It's not limited in numbers.
Number of
I
generations,
guess. It's the whole concept. If for example, Hannah breaks the spell of her ancestors that couldn't enjoy their body, if she does, well, the whole lineage behind actually gets liberated from this judgment about the body. And of course, if then Hannah has children, they will not even have it. Like they will be already born free from that. So the immediate result happens in the, like in your children. Whatever you fix within yourself, you will see in a week's time, your children will start reflecting immediately that change. So it's absolutely worth doing it for every perspective.
Yeah. This is one example of how in present time we change the past. So literally the history of these ancestors are staying only as a story, but the energetics of it completely change. So they had not had those experiences that they had because we have unhooked this experience from our ancestors' line.
Mm-hmm. And remember, that's also a great tool. We spoke about stories not long time ago. It's a very helpful tool to rewrite your story. So from the painful, my parents did this to me, I was not successful, from that gloomy perspective that you might have written your story so far, you can rewrite it in an empowering way, because it's a perspective anyways. So when you do this, let's say, life crafting exercise, you remember that your memories, if they are negative about yourself or the world or anything at all, they're just memories, and it's just a perspective, and you can as easily requalify it in the most empowering ways. So for example, I'm thinking, Gergana, if you said that you did the job that you hated and it doesn't resonate with your heart, well, you can also retell the story of how that job taught you to go towards finding yourself, so it's a matter of how you look at it.
It's like a breadcrumbs that took you to find the core. Yeah.
To retell it in empowering ways, because what we want is to not leave any regrets behind us, because everything was as it was because of a certain purpose. So Claudia.
Thank you. I just wanted to add about this journey that I'm going through, and that relates a lot with what you're saying. The fact that my mother was a very anxious being, grew up in a very, Caracas is a country, a city where crime is very high. So anxiety was the way to react to everything. She had me, so in that way. So I grew up in her womb with all this cortisol levels high and everything. So for me, anxiety is the way to react. And the fact that with this work and coming into a center and opening this space with through wisdom and intelligence is at my grasp, I realized that my reactions are set up in my DNA and my liver is already, and my genetics. So my body is reacting and it's saturated for kind of like a pre-diabetic condition, that because of sugar, cortisol levels high, acts in the liver, and the liver immediately goes to anxiety and depression. So, well, extremely, but it is that what the cycle that is. So I realize that I'm on, my whole realm is bringing me up to these doctors who are talking about this, and how anxiety and depression brings the body into fight or flight, bringing you to the mind, strong emotions, and then uh, not be able to, having difficulty of thought. You can't react properly to things, and yada yada yada. So the whole, so I am, by cleansing the body and acting with the hormonals, rebalancing hormones, and it's a lot of work, but it's, for some reason, it's being shown to me that way. I feels like I will teach others and how the mechanics of the body when it reacts to these scenarios as display. It feels like I'm in a journey of how to detach the body in of these scenarios, and it is what you talk about, the string about my parents. It feels like it's so much in my organs. It's like my liver's acting up, my pancreas is acting up, my hormones are going out of whack, peaks of emotions, and I am this kind of this doctor looking at how my body is working and what part of my brain is reacting, and my what is it, left, right, what part of my cortex is reacting to when my liver is doing this blockage, and then I see it, and then I go back into this place of peace. And what I wanted to say is that my soul is actually cheering for me and asking me to be joyful, because you are there, you did it, you have done it, you're actually getting there. But my biology is reacting to my parents' pattern. So I hope that soon that cord will be it's more like a cleanse. It feels like I want to put my body into 40 days of water and let it go. But this it's very hard to deal with this. And so my meditative state is that I'm very joyful. In my every minute, I am dealing with this this dynamic of, okay, no, it's not me. It's the body, and yeah. So, but it is this kind of it's more than a string. It's more like a, I don't know. It's like a wound. It's like I'm carrying a ball, like you know, the prisoners a long time ago, they would carry a ball of whatever metal, and I'm carrying this, and I see it, and I can feel how I'm looking at it, how to break it, and that's how it feels to me. So, and I am very mental about it. So I feels like I am liking it, and I'm not letting go of the string, and at the same time want to destroy it. So I want to let it go. So sorry.
Well,
Thank you for.
looks like your string is a source of your discovery as well. And that's fine, because usually what happens, if it's a string that's purely to be transformed, actually when you start working on it, then suddenly information appears how to heal the consequences on the body. So one scenario could be that you are working on your mother's anxieties, and then suddenly you discover the vitamin and the supplement that actually kind of calms the nervous system, and there's a diet that kind of detoxes it out from the body. So that information always comes when you're ready to get it out of the body. Information comes. If you are still aware of the cord and working with it, that means that you have to be aware of the whole process, and and that there's something really to bring into the world through that. Yeah. So there's a gold in it. So you can keep being aware of the cord and seeing what happens and what comes through it. So yeah, and that's the beauty of the work, actually, that you are aware of everything that's not yours. You examine and you treat it case by case, with however appropriate. And
Sorry, I
again,
just want to say one of these discoveries is my mother died of Alzheimer. Alzheimer is now being discovered as a type 3 diabetes.
yeah.
And that's what I'm working with a pre-diabetic condition. And so I'm realizing, connecting all these dots, and there's many nutritionists and doctors who are actually saying, this is it, this is what we're looking at, it's sugar. And it's blowing my mind, and it seems like it's a journey for me, and that I can help others with it. So
Exactly.
yeah, thank you.
Exactly. So in some ways you will stop that karma for more than just yourself, and discover and bring in a understandable way that missing link on how to deal with the body consequences of the ancestors' karma. So that's also a very cool investment in society.
So yeah, we are coming to an end of our sharing today. So yeah, thank you guys for being here, and being always like a catalyst for these explorations. So beautiful to have you and to share with you, and always precious to hear your experiences and what you're going through. Thank you so much for sharing. And we will see you next week, next Saturday, same time.
Until then, be aware, be present, be happy, and enjoy this precious time that we're giving right here and right now.
Yeah. Big hug, and see you next week.